I have decided something. What have you decided? I have decided
that
When we're born, we have a mommy and daddy, right? And then when we grow up and get married, we have children of our own. And then our children grow up and get married and have children. And so on and so on. So it's very important and very fun also to have sex.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
You're listening to Interesting Sex Podcast, a show about who, how, where, and why we fuck. I'm Miranda, your host. In every episode, I talk to someone that's into kink, fetish, or BDSM, or anything that's not too vanilla, really. Today, I have a really fun episode. I am talking to Coral. I found Coral because she is into ecosexuality. I had not heard of what that was before until pretty recently. So I was really excited to get to find someone to talk to it about, and I hope you're excited too. So the first part of the episode, we're talking about her connection and relationship with the earth. And in the second part of the episode, we talk more about her masochistic side, about her joy of pain. So if you love this episode and you want to get more into the pain side of her play, let me know, because she has a drowning fetish and a blood fetish. So if you want to hear more from her and you love this episode, please send me a message. Go to InterestingSexPodcast.com or message me on Instagram, Interesting Sex Podcast, and I will see if I can persuade her into doing another episode. Got to take a really quick second to tell you guys about our new partnership I'm stoked about, Tushy. HelloTushy.com/ISP for 10% off. I got a bidet with them, and it's a very exciting experience, and my butthole has never been cleaner. So when you wipe your butt with dry toilet paper, does it remove all the shit? No, I don't think so. That's why you get little poop spots on your underwears. I think they're called skid marks, and they're not cool. If you were to get poop on any other part of your body, would you just wipe it off with dry paper? No, you would use a wet cloth to get it off to make sure you were clean. And that's exactly what Tushy is. It's a sleek bidet attachment. It clips right onto your existing toilet and sprays your butt completely clean with fresh water. And when I say fresh water, it's not toilet water. Tushy connects to the water supply behind your toilet to spray your dirty parts with clean, fresh water. It's the same water that you brush your teeth with. They're now offering free shipping, and with HelloTushy.com/ISP, you get 10% off your products. So that's exciting. Their classic bidet is only $79 with this. I know a lot of you like to do dirty things with your buttholes, so how about you clean your butthole and get yourself a Tushy? HelloTushy.com/ISP. And while you're doing your bathroom poopies, why don't you check out the book While You Were Pooping? It's an inappropriate children's book for adults. All the pictures are drawn with coloring pencils, so it looks like a 12-year-old drew it, but everyone's naked, and it's very inappropriate. So while you're pooping, your ex got laid, or while you're pooping, a dolphin got caught in a net. It goes all over the place. It's a great book, super fun. You can find it on Amazon. You can even look up the pictures if you went on Google, whileyou'repoopingbook.com. Or you can find it on Amazon, While You're Pooping by the Anonymous Pooper. Okay, now back to our show. So it's about time to get started with our episode with Coral. If you want to see Coral as we have our conversation, she is on Instagram as average_notever, and her fetlife is thekittenhasnoname. So give her a look. She is just a lovely, lovely person. I'm so happy to have her. And with no further ado, let's open our ears, our hearts, and our holes and give a nice, warm welcome to Coral.
Hello?
Hey, is this Coral?
Yeah. Who's this?
Hey. Hi, this is Miranda.
Hey, Miranda. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
I'm good.
Where are you? What's going on over there?
I am currently sitting outside in my lovely backyard with my black-eyed Susans. They're popping off this year. They're so beautiful.
Nice. Yeah, let's get a little bit into who you are and how you identify as a human, how you identify sexually, and who Coral is on this planet.
So I identify as a female. Sexually, I have very vast outlets for my expression. I like to express myself sexually in very unconventional ways. But that doesn't really mean I'm a very hypersexual person either.
Okay.
I currently reside in Knoxville in the Appalachians. I like to travel often deeper into the Appalachian Mountains, like down into North Carolina and things like that. Appalachians are one of the oldest mountain ranges, so wildlife here is just really, really abundant.
Yeah.
And it's really, really beautiful. Speaks to my soul. So
Before I started season 2, someone had emailed me about ecosexuality, and I had never heard of this phrase before. So lately I've been cruising around Instagram with like the hashtag ecosexuality, trying to see if I could find anybody. And you have a lot of really interesting stuff up there. So I wanted to see if you would talk to us about a lot of things, but like starting with that today, if you're open to telling us about that.
yeah. So what exactly would you like to know about ecosexuality?
Well, I just know that eco means the world, and that
Mhm.
sexual means sexuality. So I just
Yeah.
assume it has to do with like love of the earth. But I didn't know how that became like a form of like sex, or how that becomes like a fetish or a kink or whatever it is. Like I know nothing.
Yeah. So I wouldn't exactly classify ecosexuality as necessarily kinky or a fetish. It can definitely become like fetishized for sure, but it's more definitely of like a lifestyle dynamic and a perspective of how you view like the earth as a lover. It pours deeply into like my spirituality personally. I can't speak for anybody else, but it is definitely like a full lifestyle dynamic rather than just like a simple sexual expression. It carries into multiple areas of your life, because instead of viewing just nature as sexy, you're viewing earth as a consensual lover.
Okay. So how does the earth like become your lover?
So I like to view the earth as a collective consciousness. So there's energy in everything, there's energy that creates you, me, inanimate objects. It's all based on like energy. It's a vibrational thing. So when you look at the earth and you see it as this collective mass of energy, we as humans are a part of that. And I like to utilize my connection with earth as a mass whole as a part of making love to myself and the earth as a consensual lover rather than like a lot of people like to view earth as like mother earth, right?
Yeah.
But that's not exactly like a consensual relationship. It's leaving room to be like, I'm always taking from earth, you know whereas when you view the earth as a consensual lover, you're like giving back equally. You're building a consciousness with the earth as a lover and a partner. And that can outpour in so many different ways, including your sexuality. But it can be as simple as like being more conscious of like how kind you're being to the earth. If you're recycling, there's so many different ways you can take care of your partner as a human. And there's so many ways we can take care of earth as a partner as well.
Right. So you had mentioned to me before, like the different parts of earth, like earth, fire, water, air.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how does that fall into this?
Well, those are like our basic elements, right? And naturally, people are driven to, certain elements within themselves. So, like, some people really love to swim, or some people really love hiking, or, just these simple grounding activities. People are naturally drawn to. Some people love gardening, digging in the dirt, building fires, all these simple earthly grounding activities. But as an ecosexual, that type of activity can become so much more of a connective experience, to where, you know, you're building a fire and then suddenly the fire itself is arousing you because of its beauty and your deep internalized connection to flame and fiery energy and decision making, and, you know, just the fire within you ignites with that fire in front of you. Or like, say you're sitting on a riverbed and you're cleansing yourself of things, you know, sexual energy is really powerful cleansing energy. So you could be sexually connecting to a river, and all of a sudden you're imagining this river god or goddess, essentially that is the earth, coming up and wrapping its arms around you and making love to you like a lover. It has a lot to do with like creative visualization, but I think energetically, whatever you're connecting with at that moment of time, if you bring that energy into nature, you can express and release yourself in some very beautiful ways.
Okay. Do you have multiple partners that are human?
Yes.
Yes. And then
Yeah.
do you also consider the earth to be another partner?
Yes.
Okay.
If
So
not
the earth
my,
is, go
the
ahead.
earth is definitely first and foremost my like primary first partner. Like, I like to view all of I'm non-monogamous, and I really believe in like relationship anarchy, where there's no hierarchical system. So like all of my lovers I treat very equally. Emotionally, mentally, they all have their same levels. But I will say that my connection with Earth as a lover is definitely, if there was a hierarchy system, would be the primary partner for sure.
Wow. So what I need to know is how, like, so you've already talked about visualization. So like,
Mm-hmm.
you would see like a goddess, or in my head, I pictured like a nymph type, beautiful woman dancing off of the river. That's just what I visualize. So I guess it's whatever you would imagine it to look like come to you. But does it ever become an actual experience? Or is it all visualization?
I think visualization is extremely powerful. And depending on how powerful your visualizations become, it can definitely translate into your outside world. And you mentioned, you know, imagining the earth becoming a goddess or a god, but that's not always the case either. A lot of people, it's an easy concept to like humanize earth. But it says a lot when we can view earth for exactly what it is too. So like I feel like I could explain some of my visualizations to you, but yes, they do at a certain point become an experience as well.
And
For
what makes
instance,
them, okay, oh yeah, go ahead.
no,
I'm
like I
asking
was gonna,
what makes them real versus your, like, your own imagery?
what makes it real has everything to do with the environment you put yourself in. First and foremost, like you have to be environmentally, like it's hard to practice ecosexuality if you're in a cement building. You know, you can
Yeah.
bring your house plants inside, or bring plants inside and create a scene, but it's not nearly as the same as like going out into nature and connecting in that way. And so there's so many different places you can go. Like you can go out to the woods, to the beach, you know, under the stars. It's but so in my own experience, a lot of my ecosexuality I practice in the woods and up in the mountains, on the riverbeds, near the trees, things like that. I will also practice in my backyard. But to translate, when it becomes, it's like a collective experience. Like your visualization is so powerful that you can transcend into having that experience in nature. So if that makes any sense, I'll put in perspective a specific moment in time just to create a picture for you.
I'd
So
love that. Thank you.
yeah, I'll tell you about a moment in time where I had a connection with a tree, and I'll tell you about another moment in time when I had a connection with some cicadas.
Okay.
So The tree. I have a few trees in a surrounding area, in this area and in surrounding areas, that I connect very deeply with. Whenever I'm around them, I literally feel like this intense, nurturing, loving energy radiating from them. Like I feel more supported than I ever have with any other human in my life. I can tell them anything when I touch them. It's literally like a lover picking me up and taking me away, you know. It's very deep connection. So there's a specific tree nearby. It's about an hour and a half from here, and I like to think fairies live there. I feel like the fae energy is really strong in the Appalachians. A lot of my friends also call ecosexuality fairy sex, so that's that's like a whole nother realm. But yeah, so there was this one moment in time where I had some pretty heavy things weighing on my heart that I was really ready to release. You know, I had meditated on them. I had sat with these things for a couple of months, and I was really just ready to release them. And I went out to the woods to this specific tree that is one of my lovers, and I sat out on this rock, and it's as if the tree, as soon as I got there, was saying, it's time to let go. I felt it. It was like a very like gut instinct, like this is the time to release this, you know? So I sat out on this rock, and I had a rock that I had picked up from the last time I was there. And it just so happened to be in my bag. Like I didn't expect it to be in my bag or anything, but it just so happened to be in my bag, and I picked it up and I carried it out to the river. And this was the rock that I found when all of these heavy things that I was holding in my heart happened. So it just happened to be there with me when I went back. And I went out to this rock, I sat down, and I began to self-pleasure. While I had this rock in my hands, I dipped my feet into the water. And in that moment, I was no longer human in my mind. I was like mass whole, and I began to visualize that my feet were a system of tree roots. Because the specific tree that I went to visit sits on a rock, and its roots stretch over top of it, and its canopy goes way up. And so I went out and I sat on a rock, and with my toes down in the water, I allowed my roots to spread over the rock. And as I was self-pleasing, I imagined the water soaking up through my roots and going up into the area, like up into my lower belly where I was self-pleasuring, and filling my gut full of just cleansing waters. And those waters began to branch up through into my heart, and my torso began to extend like a tree trunk, and my canopy began to extend up into the forest heights, and I myself became a tree. And right about at the brink of orgasm, it started to rain. And there was just something so beautifully orgasmic about the cleansing river waters on my tree roots, and the little trickle of rain coming down and cleansing my tree canopy. And then as soon as I had an orgasm, I tossed this rock into the river, and I released everything that I was holding in my heart. And then I followed that releasing ritual with another orgasm to empower myself and to really, really deeply connect with the earth, and all of the elements connected at that point. You know, the fire inside me, the water coming down from the sky, and me as an earthly creature, and the wind coming down the river. I was like united in every elemental form that I could. Whenever I connect to those four elements, and I vibrationally connect through orgasm, it is just an extremely powerful and connective experience. It's very hard to explain because it's really something that is deeply felt than something that is just, you know, someone is being kinky with you and that you just experience, you know?
Yeah.
Because the earth as a lover only speaks when you silence yourself to listen.
Do you think that the earth lives in an orgasmic state and that's why you feel more connected to it during an orgasm?
I would like to say yes and no. Yes, definitely, because nature definitely, like the raw, untouched innocence of earth is definitely a constant orgasmic state. Is the epitome of joy and pleasure and nurturing and life. However, there are definitely other areas of earth where the earth is deeply grieving and suffering. And so that is a very dual thing, you know. As
Right.
humans, we consume and we consume and we consume. And so it would definitely be hard to connect to earth in that orgasmic state in an area like a big city, you know, where it's been just raped of its beauty and innocence. It is not in an orgasmic state there, you know?
Right. Yeah. Trees, I've heard they've now found ways to tell that they are communicating to each other through their roots.
Yeah.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah,
Do
it
you know
is.
about that and how that works? And do you think that instead of like connecting through the water, maybe you could kind of root your toes near the actual tree and like communicate, like drop your roots into the tree and maybe talk to your friend that way?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime I enter the forest, like my feet, like I don't view them as just feet. Like every time my foot places down on the soil, I'm rooted and connected and listening. Like I am at, you know, just to give you a visual, I like to imagine exactly where my foot presses down. It's like a red orb that just, it radiates and permeates down into the soil and connects into that, taps into that same energy, essentially. Trees are really amazing, but all plants are, they can communicate in the same ways. Like, so it's, think about, okay, so it's the same with cactuses. Cactuses, they're all connected by giant tap roots in the desert, and they all communicate in the same ways. You know, one tree starts to turn its leaves, all of them start to turn its leaves. You know, one tree gets a disease and, you know, it's like, oh, I'm sick, everybody, protect yourself from this disease. And all the trees put up a shield, you know. But I think that as humans, we are so removed from our grounded connection to nature that most people have, I don't want to say most, but a lot of people have a difficult time finding that intuitive ability to understand what nature tries to tell them.
Yeah.
Because most of the answers we want in ourselves, we can find in ourselves if we just quiet ourselves and listen. And part of a huge way of doing that is through grounding. And as organic beings, we have to go to where we originated in an organic state.
Yeah. Have you seen the movie Pocahontas?
Mm-hmm.
It's so good.
Grandmother Willow.
Yeah. And then she's like, every rock, every tree, and every creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name.
You're talking about communicating with nature, and I have a really amazing story about communicating with cicadas during a self-pleasure session.
Okay.
Because it can be very visual, but it can also be very vibrational. So there was a day I was sitting outside in my backyard, and out here, I don't know where you are, if you get cicadas like we do, but they will start to hum and howl, and they'll start real quiet, and then they'll kind of crescendo up, and more and more and more will join in until they're super loud, and then they'll stop.
Yeah. I really like the sound of cicadas.
Yes. It's so beautiful. And the first experience I ever had with cicadas, I was laying outside on a picnic table, and I just decided to like kind of lift my hips up and start rocking my hips back and forth, just awakening that, like, you know, sexual energy, that hip movement. I just started rocking my hips back and forth to their melody, you know? And that day, I ended up rocking my hips to the point of orgasm just by following their vibration, by following their song. I didn't touch myself. I didn't actually masturbate or anything, but something as simple as just rocking my hips eventually got me to that point. And so a second time I was out, this was when I really vibrationally connected with them, like from like a very deep place. I went out and I actually started to masturbate. I started to self-pleasure, and they were crescendoing how they do. And so I zoned in, and with that heightened energy you get from like working yourself up to orgasm, I began to take that vibration and project it outwardly as if I was humming with them. And so we were humming and humming and humming, and we go and go and go. And at that point in my mind, I was no longer human. I was a cicada humming and singing with other cicadas. And it was amazing because as soon as I began to orgasm, they all stopped. They all silenced immediately, as if to hear the high vibration of my orgasm and my connection to them.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
It's wild. There's so many different ways to connect with Mother Earth, sexually or non-sexually. And yeah.
Do you see yourself like, well, a couple questions.
Yeah.
Do you just use your hand when you're self-pleasuring with the earth, or do you use like earth items, or do you have a toy or something? But that might, in my head, that doesn't sound as organic. How do you self-pleasure when you're working with the earth?
I oftentimes like to use my hands, especially if I'm out on a river. I love, so the essence of the reproductive system is water. You know, the more water you drink, the more aroused you can become, the more wet you get, etc. And so one of my favorite things to do when masturbating out near water is to, dip my hand into the water and like place it on myself while I masturbate with my hand, and imagine the water being the one that is pleasing me and not myself, and establishing the connection that way. There are other times where like I've definitely made out with a fair share of trees, like literally making out with a tree like a lover, and definitely like grinding on a tree. I've never like stuck like raw tree bark inside of me or anything like that. That doesn't sound really, that's not exactly my kink, but to each their own. But yeah, definitely can grind on trees, using the water, using your hands. I love laying in like wet moss. Ooh. Laying in wet moss and wet grass is one of my favorite places to self-pleasure.
I don't know if I would like wet grass.
No?
I don't know. Do you take off all your clothes and you're just all wet? Yeah.
All naked, always naked.
Yeah.
Very raw. Very, very, very like exposed and down to the roots of like the natural body for sure.
Yeah.
And there are some times as well where I will use like vibrators just because I know that I enjoy that, but I think that the experience is very intentional, so I don't think it really takes away from the experience. I also love using crystal yoni eggs, because crystals all have different metaphysical properties and they are of a natural material. And so inserting a yoni egg can actually really intensify an orgasm as well.
Yeah. Do you think that if you weren't were you born in Tennessee? Oh wait, you were born in Virginia Beach area, you said earlier, right?
Yeah.
Like to me.
Yeah.
When did you start feeling this connection, or how were you introduced into it? How did like you discover this? Because I'm just now discovering it, and I love playing outside and I love being in the woods and stuff.
I grew up on the beach, and always having the ocean right there. It was a little bit of a bigger city, but always having the ocean right there, I always felt just this deep cosmic connection. I'll be honest, as soon as I was starting to have sex as a teenager, I always preferred outside, obviously, because, parents don't want you having sex not to be inside or anything. But the main thing was like, one of my first partners, our sex was outside in the woods, and just with one another under a tree canopy with the light shining through. I've just always felt more aroused when in nature, or sex on the beach or under the moonlight and in the stars. Sex inside the house is great, and it can get real freaky and real kinky and real fun, or whatever you want it to be, really. But if I'm making love, one of my favorite places to make love is in nature, for sure.
Yeah. Did you kind of have like a hippie family or anything, or how did you like get like, how did you start being like, I'm going to go live in the woods and like explore this? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I didn't really have a very hippie family, honestly. I came from a pretty normal suburbia Christian family home. Growing up, I did a lot of reading and research on like paganism and Wiccanism, and I don't really put myself in a spiritual box. I don't identify as anything specific, but my interest has always just existed, and it's only grown, especially in the sexual realm. It's really only grown since I started having sex, and it's something I have felt in my core since I was very young. It's just something that like, and I will say, like, I have family members I have a lot of family members that do not associate with me now because of my connection with earth and my views and my lifestyle choices and my unconventional relationships with earth and people. It's just not familiar. But I moved to Knoxville about 6 years ago, and it really, really, really took off like very shortly after I moved to Knoxville and I was in the Appalachians. The connection that the mountains have, and the energy and the wildlife and the beauty, the sun sets out here, everything about this area is just so radically beautiful and comforting that I just couldn't help but express myself in that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To any of the listeners who are like, or even I guess to like your family who's like, this lady's crazy, like, but you know what I mean? That would be like, this is just not real and this is made up, or people, more specifically, I hope that my listeners are pretty open to ideas. Like, if you were to like tell your family, like, hey, I challenge you to try this one little thing, like your first little step to see if you have a connection, what would you recommend? Do you know what I mean? Like, before going like full-fledged, like grinding on a tree, like what would you recommend to start being like that, to believe in this connection?
Go masturbate in the woods. Find a very secluded spot, or take a partner on a hike, find a secluded spot, or try camping. But just, even if you don't even think about the woods or the trees or nature or any of it, even if you don't visualize anything, go out and self-pleasure in nature and just see how it feels. If it's different for you, if you feel more connected, if you feel a little bit more whole afterwards. I feel like we're flooded with, just watch porn or watch this, crazy kinky thing and sit in your house, masturbate, get off. I personally feel so empty sometimes after doing that because there wasn't a fulfilling connection. But especially self-pleasure in the woods, like, you can't be surrounded by, or you can, but I find it hard to believe that you can be surrounded by that much life and not feel supported and comforted,
Mm-hmm.
So just try self-pleasure out in nature.
Yeah. How do you, another somewhat sounding dumb question, but how do you have more than like, you have specific trees or plants that you feel more connected to than others? And how do you find those connections, or how do you like, are you just walking by a tree and you're like, you feel something? How does that start?
Have you ever been like out at a bar or something and like, or like, okay, maybe not even out of a bar. You're just in a place and you are open to receiving love, and someone stumbles across your path, and it's not like that, you know, oh, that person's attractive, I want to see if they'll come home with me feeling. It's like, that person, I want to get to know that person. That there's something there. That's exactly how I feel when I pass a plant that speaks to me. It's like almost like finding a 4-leaf clover when you're walking by. You're just kind of mosey and wandering, minding your own business, or you're searching for something, and you pass that plant, and then it's like you kind of do a double take, and you're like, oh, hey, what do you have to teach me today? You know?
Yeah. Is eating ever a sexual experience for you?
Well, we could get into like food fetishes, or
go.
Just in the sense of like just food in general as being a sexual thing. Not too terribly. I do have a great respect for food. I like to, anytime I cook a meal, I like to envision its whole cycle of life, where it's come from while I'm cooking, its colors, and really just deeply connect with that. And I use the chakra system a lot, so I like to color code my meals with different chakras.
That's
I know
cool.
I know you said you're kind of a yogi, and so you probably know a bit about the chakra system and everything like that. And, but yeah, I mostly use food for like color therapy with my energy. But as far as food fetishes go, yeah, there's been some wild moments in my world, let me tell you. I think one of my favorite, I made waffles and stuck one of my partner's dicks through the waffles and definitely gave them head while I ate this waffle. It was awesome.
Did you have syrup on it?
Oh yeah, it was drizzled with blueberry syrup. It was great. And yeah, it was great because like syrup was like the lube, but it was also really tasty. It was a fun time.
That sounds fun. What about any other foods?
Well, we have this like kind of bucket list thing. I don't know if you've ever heard of it's kind of like the Chubby Bunny Marshmallow Challenge, but we want to do it with grapes in my pussy and see how many grapes I can get in my pussy, and let one of my partners eat all the grapes out of my pussy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, you know, if you were to stick, what would be the best fruit or food to eat out of a pussy? And we definitely came up with grapes.
Yeah.
So I was like thinking of all these fruits, and I was like, grapes have like a very gentle like coating on them. So
yeah, that's true. And you'd probably want to use like larger grapes just to make sure you can get them all out. Yeah. And really count the number you put in there.
Exactly.
You know, no grape left behind.
This isn't exactly a food fetish, but I did have a session with a partner recently where we did like a magical bath with herbs and all the things, and instead of making out with each other, we definitely put like a flower between our lips and made out with a flower together.
So do you put the petals in your mouth?
Yeah. It was like the full flower, so we both took turns holding the stem of the flower, and then we would just like, you know, make out with the flower and then turn it around and then make out with the flower.
Was that just for like more fun, or do you feel still connected to earth once the flower's out of the ground?
It's still very connected. I always ask permission before I pick or harvest any herbs or plants. Okay. And if they don't want to be picked or harvested, then I leave them, you know.
Yeah. How do they tell you?
Yeah, always ask permission first.
How do they tell you?
It's kind of like that internal gut feeling, you know. It's like, and it also comes to your own intentions, because plants, and just like, you know, when you see the creepy person across the room, you're like, oh, that person's creepy, they might have bad intentions.
Yeah.
You just start whacking through flowers, and if you say, hey, can I have your permission to cut you, but you're intentionally like not aligned with like, I'm going to use you for a good purpose, I would like to, you know, take your energy into myself, is that okay? This is what I want to do with that energy. They'll sense that. And I think it's just, and maybe that's just me making sure that I'm doing right by the earth, you know. But it just has to be very intentional. You know, I don't think a flower literally says, like, pops up a face and is like, hey, yeah, pick me, you know.
Right.
but just making sure that everything is done with intention.
Yeah. Do you have another story with a tree or an animal, like a bug, that you want to share with us?
Honestly, I feel like a lot of these experiences are very magical. And sometimes when you speak openly about magic, things lose their fire and their magic. And so I'm happy to answer more questions about ecosexuality, but I don't want to dive too terribly deep into too many of my magical stories with nature, because I feel as though the meaning isn't as powerful. It really is like sharing it's like sharing secrets with a lover, you know? It's like I'm sharing my personal secrets with the earth as a lover.
Yeah.
So there's a certain level where me talking about it is consensual, and a certain level where it's like I'm exposing too much about our relationship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing the ones with us that you did.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. With astrology, do you feel like your astrological sign, do you think that has anything to do with how you most connect with elements of nature and what you're most drawn to, or do you think they're not related?
I love astrology. I don't think that anybody's sign has really anything to do with like how strong their connection to nature is.
Right.
Because,
well, what I mean is, like, I'm a Taurus, so I'm an earth sign. So
yeah,
maybe I'm more like, if I was to try like to explore ecosexuality, maybe it would be best for me to start with like earth and tree versus someone that's a fire or a water sign. They might have a stronger connection as like a primary connection to this than another.
you know, I can see what you're saying. And actually, this just brought up, I am going to share another experience because this just goes hand in hand with what we're talking about. So I'm a Leo, I'm a fire sign. One of my first like real experiences with making love to nature, I was sitting by a fire with my partner, and we were on this camping trip, my partner being one of my human partners. And we were on a camping trip, and we were you know, kind of distanced by the fire, and we were both naked, and we both began to masturbate. And which masturbating together with your partner is a very powerful thing. Do it often. It's awesome. Sharing that energy but not having any touch is like really powerful. But anyways, we were masturbating by the fire, and at one point I literally, like, and I wasn't on any drugs, I swear, but power of visualization is very powerful. And I saw the fire, its flame, kind of creep over and begin to touch me, just like I explained earlier. Like, the water was pleasing me, the flame crept over and began to touch me and please me, and it ignited this fire all the way up into my heart. And that was probably one of my first experiences with like making love to and with nature. And I guess that is, Leo's a fire sign, so fire. But most often I connect with, you know, trees and water, and that's like, I really have a lot of fire in my chart. So sometimes we're attracted to what our opposite is.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be able to say yes or no on that one, but I do think that's a really interesting concept.
So skipping into what I wanted to talk to you next, just for a little bit, is I find it very interesting that you have such like a softness and like connection with earth, yet you love pain. And and like needles and hooks and just all sorts of pain. So why don't you share like a little bit about the difference of the two and how they probably each serve and feed you, and a little bit about what draws you to pain and what you enjoy.
I love things being dual, so there's balance in everything. And just having that one extreme of, like you said, the gentleness and the softness of nature it's more like a lifestyle dynamic for me. It's like a very consensual lifestyle dynamic, just like in BDSM. You have, you have your top and bottom, which is, play partners. And then you have like lifestyle dynamics where it's like dominant, submission, or switch, so on and so forth. I view my connection with nature as definitely a lifestyle dynamic. And then my kinks, though, that I love to explore with my human partners, who some are also very ecosexual. So I've found like a little group of people who love that duality as well. But yeah, pain is a very powerful tool in healing for me. I came from a bit of a traumatic background, so utilizing pain as a means to transcend this human body and experience chaos in a controlled manner is very, very powerful for me. And it's also very pleasurable. Just like in ecosexuality, and getting back to that raw organic body, when you experience pain and associate it with orgasm, you're getting back to those basic raw human feelings and instincts, and I really like intense levels of pain because it can help create those transcendent headspaces, just like I feel when I'm in a deep state of meditation, of connecting to the earth in an ecosexual way.
The pain can get like so bad that you disconnect from your body because you don't want to be in it.
No, I love sitting with that pain. It's like your endorphins burn through and you get into subspace, which I don't know if you've ever had anybody on your show that talks about subspace before, but it is a transcendent headspace where you're not exactly dissociated. You're actually 100% present and only present with what is happening to your body in that moment. Everything else, every thought, every polluted mind chatter you had is gone because you are 100% present in that moment. And everybody's pain tolerance is different. So a lot of people see and hear about the kind of masochism I'm involved with, and they think, oh my God, that's so hardcore. But for me, it's like, it feels great. I don't know. It's just, I just need that extra bit, I guess, because everybody's body is just different,
So the same kind of release that you had by throwing the rock into the river after you grew roots and had the water loving you is a similar experience of release that you get during the pain?
Most definitely can be. Absolutely. If I'm practicing or playing with someone who validates, nourishes, and understands that kink is not only just fun for me, it's very therapeutic for me, then yes, I can definitely have those types of releases and transcendent experiences.
Would you mind sharing like one of the more intense scenes that you've experienced and what it helps you get rid of?
I'm trying to think of like the transcendent. Let me tell you about a transcendent experience. Probably my flesh hook suspension was the closest thing to that releasing that I had. Flesh hook suspension. The pain is so intense. I don't know if my brain just gets confused or what, but I cannot help but orgasm every time I'm suspended with hooks. And there was a time where I was doing a performance and I went up in a lotus position, which is 4 hooks in the calves, 2 in the hips and 2 in the back, and you're cross-legged. And I went up in hooks. I had my clothes ripped off, and then I was draped in flowers, like wrapped in flowers, and then I received a flower crown, and then I had spears shoved through my cheeks. And
Spears.
yeah, like I don't know exactly the gauge, but you know, like a thicker pierce, like a very large piercing needle, probably.
Put through your cheeks?
Right through my cheeks, like one on each side, so it kind of made like an X when they exited my mouth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but yeah, as soon as those cheek spears went through, I had an orgasm, and like I went into it very intentionally. So like anytime I enter a scene, I go into it very intentionally. Like, what am I trying to release? What am I trying to manifest at this point?
So you would come up with an intention kind of before you went into it.
Oh, always. Whenever I'm doing any masochistic scenes, I definitely go into it intentionally of like, okay, there's some things that I am ready to let go of, and I'm going to face it full force, because once that pain starts coming and that mind chatter starts to calm, I'm able to face my demons and my shadows so much more clearly and so much more presently. And I'm able to sit with them. And that physical exertion of pain is like externally feeling the internalized pain that I feel. And I attach the two together. And then by the time the scene is over and during aftercare is when I intentionally release it all. All the pain of all that internal struggle is gone, and all the pain from that scene physically is gone. And then if I'm like my marks, like I love bruises and abrasions and scars, my marks afterward are like a reminder of the powerful work that I just did and my resilience. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. Because I was curious how, if your mind goes empty, how you can have moments where you get rid of things or like deal with things because your mind is quiet. But I guess if you set an intention before and then release kind of after you have that silence, I guess that makes more sense.
100%. Because I have gone into very sadomasochistic scenes where I didn't go into it intentionally. And for me personally, the scene had to get called because I became very overwhelmed and couldn't handle it because something traumatic popped up in my head, and it pulled me out of head. It triggered me, exactly. And so
it was triggering instead of healing.
I would definitely do everything with intention and be very, very personally aware of your capabilities, your boundaries, your limitations, and what you energetically are able to give and receive. Because people think that kink and especially masochism is just, oh, I'm just going to get beat with the paddle and it's going to be fun. And it's like, actually, no, if you play hard enough, it can be very traumatic or be very, very healing, you know? And I think there's a very large misconception with sadomasochism there for a lot of people.
Were you scared when you first decided to try this? And now you are suspended from your actual skin with spears in your mouth. What did it look like when you started? And were you scared?
I think there is a certain level of fear that comes with every scene, whether it be flesh hook suspension, whether it be just, playing with a partner, or, a sadomasochistic scene, or whatever you have negotiated, if it's a little bit more on the hardcore side, or if you have set intention and you're going to be facing some inner demons. There's always a fear initially of, like, before the scene starts, of, is my body going to be able to handle this? Am I going to be okay? Is the person who's scening with me, going to be aware? What headspace are they in? There's always that underlying fear of, am I going to be able to actually handle this? But you may surprise yourself. A huge motto in my life is feel the fear and do it anyways. And life is nothing but a series of trial and error. And sometimes we feel the fear, we do it anyways, and we fail epically. But that failure is a beautiful place to grow if you choose to grow from it, rather than, failing and then it becoming traumatic. And then sometimes we try and we really surprise ourselves, and it's a really beautiful experience. With flesh hook and that kind of thing, I was never initially scared. I saw a documentary when I was 11 years old of people suspending from their chest, and I was like, I want to do that. I gotta do that. Like, that looks like some crazy spiritual journey shit. Like, I gotta do that.
Yeah.
And then with sex, like, I've always just loved pain. It's turned me on. It's just, I don't know. I just like it. I don't know. There's nothing to it other than the fact that I just enjoy feeling things. I'm a big feeler person. Like, when you become in relation with people, one way or another, there's no way to avoid it unless you just seclude yourself your whole life. But when you come into relationship with one another, that love and that joy is eventually going to stimulate death. It's all part of the life-death life cycle. And it takes an act of radical trust of yourself and another person to experience that with one another and be like, yeah, this feels amazing. And this beautiful passion of connection that you feel, whether it be with like a person, the earth, yourself, an experience, it is going to stimulate an ending at some point. And that is just the balance of how things happen. If we don't allow ourselves to feel fully, then we're never fully experiencing. And part of fully experiencing life is experiencing the dark parts of it as well. You physically and mentally and emotionally cannot have joy and pleasure without loss and grief.
Right. Yeah. If you don't have really fucking shitty days, you won't appreciate the good ones.
Mm-hmm. People don't realize that to truly be balanced is to truly feel every part of that balance, rather than to just like float somewhere in between constantly. You're like numbing yourself at that point,
Yeah. You already mentioned the grapes and the bucket list, but I do like to ask my guests about a bucket list sexual scenario at the end of the episode. Do you have any more things that you haven't done yet that you look forward to trying?
Yes. I'll try to list them off the top of my head. I really want to go up I rope bottom actively with a rigger in the area. And I want to be tied up in shibari. And then while I'm in shibari, have the flesh hooks thrown into me and then cut down out of the rope down to the hooks.
Oh.
Yeah.
That could be jolting, but is that what you want?
Yeah.
Wow.
I want to, I would really like to go and do that at some point.
That would probably give you a giant orgasm.
I hope so. I hope so. And I'm sorry for the viewers or listeners that don't agree with this, but I have a very strong church fetish. So it's a bucket list thing for me to like have sex or have an orgy in a church. This is probably the wildest one. But a partner and I have a fantasy of getting certified to personally skydive and have sex on the way down, or oral, at least something sexual on the way down.
Yeah.
While skydiving. We have a fun scene planned and coming up this year, hopefully for my birthday. That goes into my drowning fetish. It's a bucket list one, but it's pretty artsy. It's going to be fun. I don't know if you have FetLife or anything, but it will definitely get posted there. But we're going to get a glass fish tank and partially suspend me in shibari. And then I'm going to get fucked from behind while drown in this glass fish tank. So the pictures from that will be pretty cool because you'll be able to see like my drowning face.
Yeah. I'm speechless. That is very exciting. So speaking of your FetLife, I will have all of your Instagram or FetLife, whatever you want, posted in the show notes. But if you just want to tell everybody as well so they can hear it from you.
Yeah, my FetLife is a kitten has no name with no underscores or capitals. Yeah, Instagram is average underscore not ever. And those are pretty much only the two only social media platforms that I use these days.
Okay. Sounds good. Well, I'll make sure everyone has it. And thank you. You're such a beautiful human. And thank you for opening up and sharing. And I will go thank the earth for letting it allow you to share its experience as well.
Well, thank you so much for
yeah.
that. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you and share my little piece of what ecosexuality means to me and share my little world and experience with kink.
I'm definitely more open to more ideas now. So thank
Yay.
you. And
Well,
have a
thank
great
you.
rest of your day. And let us know when your photo shoot of your birthday. When is your birthday?
It's in 9 days, August 20th. Yeah.
Wow. So when this airs, it'll probably be after. So
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. So we will check her FetLife link in the show notes, and A Kitten Has No Name, and you can see some crazy pictures.
Thanks.
Okay. So thank you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
I hope you do too.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
And there you have it. That's a nice balance of softness with badassery. I hope you loved it. And like I said before, if you want to hear more from Coral, go ahead and send me a message at InterestingSexPodcast.com or through like Instagram and let me know, because she's into blood play and drowning and all sorts of other like hardcore shit. So I'm sure she'd love to talk to us again. She's really, really cool. Thank you guys for listening. Do you think you have interesting sex and you want to tell me about it and maybe be on the show? Go to InterestingSexPodcast.com and send me a message. Every week I like to take a moment for us all to sit and remember that we are very lucky to live in a time and in a place that we get to have sex with who and how we want, and not everyone is afforded that right. I can't think of anything worse than being a child who is sex trafficked. 10% of any profits that come into Interesting Sex Podcast go to help stop sex and human trafficking. Please go to InterestingSexPodcast.com, and we have a place for you to donate to help me continue to make great episodes as well as be a part of the solution. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to the band 41 for this super weird song that I adore. 41music.net. And I can't wait to see you next Tuesday to find out what the pussy drags in. Yeehaw!
Well, it's a doobity-doo. Yes, it's a doobity-doo. Well, it's a doobity-doo. Yes, it's a doobity-doo. I mean a doobie-doobie-doobie-doobie-doobie-doo.
Yeah!